Hello, everyone. I am once again joined by my father for another movie review. Say hi, Dad.
Hi, everyone.
This year marks the 90th anniversary of King Kong. Can you believe that?
No, it's hard to believe.
No.
90 years.
And what better way to celebrate is by talking about King Kong. Dad, what do you think of King Kong?
Well, I can only imagine what it was like when it first came out and people saw that in the theaters for the first time.
Right.
Still today, it's very impressive, even with the old technology. It's really it's a great adventure story.
It is.
And as well as being a real forerunner of dinosaur monster movies,
Right.
that type of monster.
Right.
And the stop motion animation to me is really to anyone really, it's superb.
It is.
And I think in ways it outdoes the CGI.
Absolutely. I'll never forget the first. Well, I mean, obviously, before I saw this movie, it was a film. It's like King Kong is like one of those like iconic figures. Even if you never saw the movie, you just know it because of like hearing the name or seeing a picture of Kong and seeing a big giant gorilla, in the jungle, like stomping on or fighting dinosaurs. When I first saw this, when I was 12 years old, it was around the time when the Peter Jackson remake was coming out. I remember like watching like I had that like shock, like oh my god, this is like the most amazing thing I've ever seen in my life. It's like hard to even every time when I rewatch it, I still have that like 12-year-old inside of me, getting that like excitement to see how cool this is, like all the dinosaur fights and how like cool King Kong is.
I know.
Yeah.
And to think about how painstaking that whole process is.
Yeah.
That each particular movement had to be shot one frame at a time. And not only is it just the movement of, say, an arm or a leg, which has to be coordinated, one shot, one frame at a time.
Right.
But also the facial features, the expressions.
Yeah.
And then kind of marrying that to a real live person filmed and superimposing that.
Right.
Along with the fantastic set.
Yeah.
Which is just really an amazing feat.
That's another way I love about the film is like the atmosphere. I love like the jungle scenery. It's just so like beautiful to look at. Like where like we see like Kong's like I guess you would say like his like hideout, like a cave where he like takes Fay Ray's character. You would say that's where he would live when he's like not like fighting dinosaurs or other things that he does.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just an amazing, like it's just a phenomenal film. I think it still like holds up to this day with the effects and also and the look of the Kong is. I think it's still like pretty cool looking. Wouldn't you say?
Yes. Yeah. It really is.
Yeah. I mean, how could you like not like think like this is like a work of art and beauty of the look of Kong? Like you said, that like when we watch the documentary, that like stop motion is really like the most. Even that guy, I don't remember who that guy who said it, but he said like it really can take. Really, you put your muscles into it when you're like trying to like redo takes over and over again. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not something that you can just go back and just erase it, like you can, on a computer.
Right.
It has to be if you ruin a single movement, you have to do the whole thing over again.
Right.
Which is it's hard. I can't even imagine that.
No. It's even like for what I've like watching like not just like this movie like in the future of like a stop motion animation, they said it's the most difficult, most complicated film technique and like it's hard to say. Is that the hardest film technique or who knows?
Yeah, I would imagine it's got to be the most time consuming one.
Yeah, that too. They said it's probably more timing than when you do a regular scene of like regular actors. Especially recently Del Toro's Pinocchio film.
Right.
Yeah, even though it's different.
Right, it is. I mean, that was an excellent movie also.
Yeah.
I mean, and the stop motion there was very impressive.
It was.
I'm not exactly sure how they did it, if they used some, computer
probably
to smooth over some of it.
Right.
But still, it's not only it's very pleasing, I think, to the eye, the way I see it, and with the way King Kong, and then in the future, Ray Harryhausen and his stop motion animation uh, it kind of adds more to the fantasy element than something that's computer generated.
Right.
I think.
For what I've read, like, well, not just Ray Harryhausen, like a lot of like filmmakers were inspired. Like, this is a film that's inspired a lot of filmmakers: Steven Spielberg, Peter Jackson. Like the list goes on and on. I'm not sure there's anyone else I left out on that list that comes to mind, but it seems like, this is like a must go to for filmmakers to watch. They want to learn how to make like big giant monster movies, or not just giant monster movies, like an action. Because besides this being a big giant monster movie, it's basically like an action adventure film, like you said before.
That's right. Yeah.
Because you have like these like group of like sailors and explorers who are like making a movie, and then they like come across the island. They come across, and the villagers like kidnap Fay Ray's character Anne as like a sacrifice to Kong, and looking at him like he's a god. Right.
Yeah, and his Kong really has a character.
Yes.
I mean, the audience develops a connection in some way with him, and can empathize with him.
Yeah.
In his torment.
Right. He sees this beautiful woman who, like, it's like, it's a basic, like, I don't know if this is the first, but this is an example, like, classic Beauty and the Beast type of story when you think about it.
Yeah, it is. And one very interesting thing that was pointed out in the documentary is that when Kong brings Ann Darrow, to his lair,
right,
when he's in the cave, he sets her up on a ledge,
right,
and his back is turned to her,
right,
and then this reptile kind of sneaks up trying to get Ann Darrow, and he's startled and he turns towards the reptile and starts fighting him. But just before that, they point out that he was grabbing a small flower that he was going to give to Ann Darrow,
right,
which was very interesting. I never really noticed that, and most people probably haven't, because it's so quick that it happened.
I think it's one of those things, like, because when you're watching the movie, you're not like analyzing every second of it, like the way like film critics do or moviegoers do. That you're just thinking about how like Ann Darrow's trying to get away from Khan because she's horrified, she's petrified because of how big he is and scary he is.
Right.
And that's another thing too. I think she does an amazing job in this movie, and
yeah, she does.
Her screams are very believable, and you can say she was probably the first. Maybe I don't really know about the first or early scream queen for the time.
Right, I think she probably was.
Yeah, yeah. And also the other character. What do you think of the other characters in this film, like Jack Driscoll and Carl Denham, etc.?
Yeah, Carl Denham. I think that he's also, he's a big promoter.
Right.
He's looking, to be the showman, and to have people be amazed at this finding that he has.
Right. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, and it's funny that he wants his crew to share in his financial success, right? Right. He said, "What did he say?
We're millionaires, boys. I'll share it all with you."
Whether he's going to do that or not, I don't know. But
I don't know.
The sentiment is there.
He was probably just saying that to get their attention, to bring back King Kong to New York City to make money and promote like how we found this like humongous big creature, and also what I was going to say before is that before he goes to the island, goes exploring. I remember when I took film classes back at Suffolk. I remember my film professor pointed out how when you see him walking on the street, those people that you see are actually real people, because that was during the Great Depression. Those were real homeless people, at that time. And well, then again, this was I don't remember who said it, but someone in the documentary pointed out how this was the go-to and the escapism for people at that time during the Great Depression, when they were so depressed about not having a job, when they didn't have money to buy things that they would have wanted for themselves or their family. Right.
And remember at the time that there was no television.
No.
There was radio.
Right.
But it's just to have a visual experience, a cinematic experience.
Right.
The only option you had was to go to the movies.
Right. And it's amazing they had money to go to a movie, but yet somehow they had a hard time still struggling to make ends meet at that time. I guess because but whatever was considered expensive was considered expensive that time period compared to like nowadays and stuff. And
Yeah, his partner is Ernest Schoedzak. I'm not sure if that's how you pronounce
I'm not
his
sure we
name.
pronounced it right,
Yeah.
but for what I've like read and also watching that documentary, they sounded like they were like interesting people to like read about.
Right. Yeah, because they actually did exploring,
Yeah,
and they made a couple of documentaries that were very well received, and they were innovative for the time.
right.
One was called Grass, and there was another one, I don't remember the name of it, but they actually went out and filmed, this these people, animals in their natural environment.
Basically, they were basically, this is what the inspiration of like Marion C. Cooper's like the part Carl Denham was, like basically Carl Denham is Marion C. Cooper.
Right.
That was
Yeah.
basically based on him, but of course in a fictionalized way, of course.
Right. Right.
Yeah, minus bringing back a big giant gorilla to New York City.
Yes.
Yeah, like it sounded like he was a very like adventurous guy. He was like he wanted to go out and explore to see what was beyond his horizons a little bit.
That's another thing in the documentary that was interesting, is that both of them are filmed as the pilots, two of the pilots in the airplane at the end, where Kong is on the top of the Empire State Building,
Right.
and the airplanes are shooting at him.
Right.
There's a close-up of two of the pilots, and the pilots are Ernest Schoedzak and...
Really? I did not know that.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Marion C. Cooper?
And Marion C. Cooper.
Wow, I actually did not know
they
that.
they were not flying the planes. They just did a close-up of them in a cockpit, and the two of them, that was their cameo.
They were ready for their close-up, Mr. DeMille.
Yes, I guess that was an early Hitchcock thing.
Yeah, I guess.
Before Hitchcock.
Yeah, but the only difference is I don't know, they weren't like they definitely were not like, I mean, not that they weren't as like famous like they are now in like, with modern day like books and modern day documentaries about the making the original Kong. Yeah. Also, one thing I wanted to talk about too is Jack Driscoll. What did you think of his character?
It was kind of one-dimensional.
A little bit, but he grows on you a little bit later on.
And you have to remember, this Bruce Cabot, it was his first movie.
Right.
I don't think he had any acting experience.
He wasn't too, I mean, not great. He was not too bad.
Yeah, I mean, I'm saying that just giving him leeway there, he was okay. He wasn't bad.
Well, at first we obviously see he's a little bit misogynistic and sexist, but then eventually later on, like, he grows on you, especially how he's very like worried, concerned. He falls in love for Anne. He wants Anne back after when Khan takes her away from him.
Right.
I have to admit, you could definitely like point this out. This part's a little bit corny when he goes, "Say, I think I love you."
Yes, I know.
A little bit. Even though the movie is great, but that part a little bit corny. But again, that was the 30s at that time. That was considered. Then again, who really defined what good acting was at that time period before there was acting schools and stuff? And
well, no, I mean, it was different. A lot of the people there had experience on the stage,
right.
So they were more exaggerated,
right?
Because film is a lot more intimate, and you have to tone down your expressions for film,
right?
And then of course there was the whole silent era before, and this is actually just the beginning of the talking era,
right. So. Well, then again, a lot of like actors who like made it to Hollywood, they were vaudeville trained actors, is why they were able to make the transition from the talkies, unlike previous silent actors who did not make the transition, or even they tried, they just couldn't do it. That's why a lot of them quit and retired after that. Yeah,
and it's it is a compelling story, and as we said, it's an adventure film.
Yeah,
with really dangers at every turn.
Right.
Once they go through that gate.
Yeah.
It's just one thing after another.
Well, when you also think about the gate, you have to think Jurassic Park in some ways. That was like the 90s modern. I remember my film professor gave a good point, but I wonder if when King Kong was, like the parts like when King Kong is like in New York City, destroying the buildings and eating, throwing people, and I wonder if Steven Spielberg told the actors of Jurassic Park, think King Kong, think King Kong.
Yeah, maybe.
Because you can see like the connections of like Jurassic Park to like King Kong a little bit with inspirations, but instead Jurassic Park is dinosaurs, whereas King Kong, well, it's a combination of dinosaurs and a big giant gorilla. Yeah.
Well, and just as a two things about the set. One is that the forest, that type of, or that part, that was really based on the engravings of a French artist, Gustave Doré, and he was a very famous illustrator. He illustrated fairy tales. He did the Bible. He did engravings of the Dante's
Dante's Inferno, or am I thinking of it?
Yeah, Dante's the whole trilogy, the Inferno, Purgatory, and Paradise.
Right.
And the other interesting thing about the set is that it was used in a previous movie.
Right, The Most Dangerous Game.
Right, which is also an excellent movie.
That is.
Not a monster movie,
no.
but more of a human monster.
Right.
Fay
Wray was also in that one too.
Fay Wray was in that one too, and it's the set was actually used for King Kong, and you can see similarities.
Yeah.
You can see actual locations that are the same in that movie and in the Kong movie.
It's amazing how that was, again, when I first saw that, like you said, you see the connection. You're like, oh my god, that's the same set design that they used for Kong, but the difference is that movie came out first, then Kong. Yeah. Also, in order to talk about this review, what King Kong review is not complete without talking about the famous lost spider pit scene.
Right. Yeah, I remember reading about that. They used to have a book back, I guess it was in the 80s, probably in the 80s. It was called The Book of Lists, and one of the lists was the famous lost footage from famous films.
Right.
And that one was always on some kind of a list.
Right.
And the legend was that it was so disgusting that people used to walk out or began vomiting when they saw this footage. So, and that footage is lost.
Right.
And
well, despite that, I remember as a kid growing up, when we watched this on DVD, I thought, not realize that Peter Jackson did a reenactment, recreation. I thought that was the actual scene, but not knowing that was Jackson and his crew, as he wanted to show and demonstrate this is supposedly how it happened at that time when it came out. And I think what's interesting, I've watched or actually not watched, maybe read interviews of people who said how their grandma, their great-great-grandparent saw this in the theater, and they said that one family said, oh, I remember the spider pit scene, that grossed me out, I remember leaving the theater because of that. Or one said, my great-grandparents said that they didn't see the spider pit. Maybe maybe it depends on the person. Maybe they pulled that scene out after when it got a bad reaction that time.
Well, I don't know if it was just in the previews where they showed it. I'm not exactly sure.
Yeah, it's really hard to say.
But it's interesting to check out Peter Jackson's recreation.
Yeah. Because it's pretty cool, how you get that sense of feeling. So this is why you think this is what people were leaving the theater when they were throwing up, feeling grossed out about that. Where the spider and the big giant insects were eating the explorers.
And there are pretty gross scenes in King Kong itself.
Well, it's true, yeah, of course.
He's fighting people's bodies, and stepping on them, and crushing them, and throwing people out of the train.
That too, and also he rips open a dinosaur's mouth.
Right.
I'll never forget when I saw that scene as a kid. I'm like, oh my god, did I just not see blood in a I think that was the first time I ever saw blood in a 30s movie at that time, and it's so graphic to see something like that in a 30s film for its time. Wow. I was just amazed and intrigued by that. I mean, sometimes I'm still am because he's protecting the woman that he loves and he's fighting this dinosaur and
yes, I know.
Yeah. I know. I'm like, wow, what an amazing and crazy gore scene for its time, and yeah. Any other thoughts about Kong that comes to mind that you want to touch upon?
Well, it's also a love story.
That's true. Yeah.
I mean, not only between Driscoll and
Love triangle between Kong and Anne.
and Anne, and then Kong and Anne. So
Yeah.
and like the ending of the film, what Carl Denham says, it was beauty that killed the beast.
Yeah. It's sort of like how as a kid I'm thinking like, yes, they got Kong, but now you like sort of feel sympathy for Kong and you see how he was misunderstood.
Mm-hmm.
But still, that's just like a great, like a sad, tragic scene when he, gets shot by airplanes and falls off the Empire State Building. And I don't know why. I remember as a kid when we went to Empire State Building, I thought, as a kid, I not realized that was obviously, it was a fake set where that wasn't the real Empire State.
Right.
I don't think Mary T. Cooper wasn't that crazy to use a big giant gorilla, like a fake gorilla.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just to their credit, to the people, the animators, like Willis O'Brien, and Marcel Delgado, who designed the ape, and the way they built this structure that they could move in such minute detail in order to make this convincing.
Right.
And it's a tribute to everybody involved that they could make the audience feel empathetic for this piece of rubber and metal that's just been put together. And when you see Kong in his suffering at the end, you feel for him.
You do. It's sad tragedy of a man who found love and wanted to be loved and not judged, but in some ways similar to like Frankenstein in some ways, but different, but 10 times bigger than Frankenstein.
Right.
Oh yeah, I wanted to also point out I love the scene like when like the showing of like Kong where and Jack Driscoll and Carl Denham are like promoting Kong and people are like amazed to see, like, could you imagine like if something like that really did happen, like seeing this big giant gorilla and like he's chained and it's just it's you're thinking like what could go wrong here, but everything goes wrong.
Right. Right.
He breaks loose because people are like amazed, they're like scared, and I don't know who's more scared, Kong or the audience. It's hard to say.
Right. And then they start taking the pictures, with the flash photography, and things go crazy.
Yeah, then he like roams around New York City and he's disaster and destruction, and of course he's looking for Anne, and which he does. I guess we've summarized everything that comes to mind that we talked about with Kong. That was our review of King Kong. Like the video, subscribe, and stay tuned for more future of the Kong series. Stay tuned. Say bye, Dad.
Bye-bye.